made reasonable progress, as can be seen here with stripping down the engine out of the Spitfire. We didn't plan on it going as far as what it has, but we found various issues that we think ought to be addressed, or certainly somebody with more experience than myself ought to have a look at. So up top here we've got the cylinder head, which, truth be told, hasn't shown anything of too much concern. We've got a little bit of play in some of the valve guides and a few of the ports here, which if I grab my torch, you're probably able to see a little bit more on there. So the exhaust ports, which are the larger ones, these are a little bit cleaner than the likes of the intake ones, but the intake ports are getting a little bit pitted in some of the areas. So we're going to have these inspected and just make sure that everything's okay there. So this is going to go away to a machine shop in Derby, where they're going to skim the head and get that nice and flat. So we've got a nice mating surface for the head gasket, as well as fully clean it all back and crack test it to make sure that there's no hidden defects or anything going on in here. So I'm going to plug that down here for now. Pulled that off, and it was then when it showed us some other bits of concern. So as you look here, you obviously got your push rod cavities where they come through, but in this cylinder here we've got what looks to be a very fine, it looks to me like a crack. Like I say, I'm not an expert on this sort of stuff, but that I want to be inspected by somebody with a little bit more knowledge than myself. The other bores all seem to be okay. There's a little bit of scoring here and there, but nothing of too much concern. So what we're going to look at is trying to figure out what's going on in the cylinder closest to the clutch side and kind of go from there. But we're also going to look at overboring this, I believe, to around 40 thou over and go for the next size pistons, just for a little bit more capacity, but more just to make sure that we've got a nice fit between the pistons and the bores. These are the pistons that came out, and over time, as can be seen there, I don't think these are too bad, but you can see that there's quite a lot of kind of gunk and build up on some of the rings, which that's what will have caused some of the scoring. But you can see there how we've gone shiny on some parts of it and dull on others. So what's happened there is we've had a bit of side to slide slop between the piston and the bore. So when these were actually, it's still in the engine where they were sat where they needed to be, you could actually get quite a bit of movement with pressure over the top of your thumb, and really that's not ideal. I don't think it was catastrophic, but if we're going this far, may as well do it properly. So those are going to come with us to the machine shop. That's going to the machine shop, as is that. The flywheel is also going, because as we've pulled it apart, pulled the clutch off, it's got a brand new clutch on, so the previous person was willing to drop that straight in and go forward with what they wanted to do. However, either through not noticing or perhaps not quite bothered, as you can see on the actual contact face for the clutch, it's really quite badly scored in a few areas here. So we're going to take this and get it reground so that we get a nice finished surface here, and they'll also remove these studs and they'll machine this face down so they maintain the original specification for the gap between the basket and the actual clutch plate, so everything should be okay there. We're going to take the crank with us as well, just for them to have a look over it, possibly have a look at what kind of balance it's running. And thankfully it would appear that the main bearings and the bottom end bearings are all really good. There's not really much wear on them at all. There's a little bit of wear on the rear main bearing, this can be seen there. So again, I'm going to have it inspected by the machine shop and just say, do you recommend going oversized? Do you recommend refitting standard size ones? And go from there. Like I say, we are a fabrication workshop with classic cars in mind. I know how to pull an engine apart and put it back together, but the finer details of it all, I'm all up for hearing the professional's opinion on that. So we're going to get these loaded up and we'll join you at the machine shop. what we've got here, as you saw earlier, we've torn the engine apart on the Spitfire. So what we've got here are the main components for the timing setup, or timing chain. So on this side, we've got a spacer, and then the crank sprocket, and then what I can only assume is a throw washer, but neither here nor there. Woodruff key, 2 bolts and a plate with locking tabs on it, which secured the cam sprocket on and the timing chain. What we've decided to do, because when we took it apart, the cam sprocket, this had a lot of very fine lines over it where oil seemed as if it was seeping out of cracks or any kind of fatigue within this. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a real good clean up with some brake cleaner, and we're going to run a dye penetrant test just to make sure that this is going to be okay to go again, because like I say, the actual teeth condition is perfectly okay to go again, but the fact that when we took this apart it looked like lots of little hairline cracks all the way around it. They're gone now because we've wiped it and handled it that much, but obviously those patterns where they come from suggest that they were holding oil. So what we're going to do, we're going to give it a real good clean up and get it soaking with some dye penetrant, and we'll leave that for 20 minutes to half hour or so. We'll come back, clean it off and get some developer on it and see what happens there. So we'll give it a real good clean. We've got a rag. Get this one on it. So some folk might say that brake and clutch cleaner is not what you should be using on this. You should be using proper cleaner, and what I say is you guys go and buy the proper cleaner and give it to me then if that's the case, because that's a lot cheaper and it does just as good a job. It's the exact same thing. You look at what it's actually made from, it's the exact same thing. So what we'll do, we'll give it a real good wipe off, get any of the ingrained dirt and crap and all that kind of shit off it. It's clearly been off at some point before, because whoever's tried to get the tabs off of it have absolutely butchered it. But we'll give it another going over there and see what we can do. So I'm only going to test one side at a time, because realistically if it is cracked, it doesn't really matter which side I pick that up on it, it'll be going in the bin and we'll be getting a new one. Or realistically I'll be looking at getting the duplex set up so you get double the thickness of chain all the way around it. So I'm just going to set that up on a dirty rag, just so I'm not caking everything in dye. Set that up on there, nice and clean. Yeah, that'll do nicely. Now obviously been apart because somebody's centre dotted and put scribe lines on it as to where all the centre marks and your timing marks and top dead centre and all that kind of jazz, instead of actually just paying attention to what the manual says, which it's a lot easier to time up than having to do that. But this is the dye that we're going to be using, so we'll give that a make sure that we're getting plenty coming through. There we go, look. Lovely. Lovely jubbly. So we'll coat the whole thing, and we'll make sure it's doused in it. Give it every fighting chance we possibly can. Clean that out. And we'll be back in half an hour to clean that off. Unlike what I did before where I sprayed the item with it, I'll be spraying the rag with the cleaner now and wiping that off. And then we'll be applying some of the developer and crossing our fingers and toes to make sure it's all okay. That was good. So, over to the second part of the dye penetrant test. We've had this cam sprocket sat here for the last half hour or so, absorbing all of the dye. Well, hopefully not absorbing the dye into the cracks that we may or may not find on the sprocket itself. So what we're going to do now, we're going to, rather than spray that, we're going to give the rag a spray with some brake and clutch cleaner, and we're going to give it a wipe off, and we're not going to be too dramatic with the wiping off of, because you can inadvertently take too much of the dye off. So a little bit of kind of cloudy pink coming through on the developer from where it's kind of left over on various score marks and things like that. It's not going to be too much of a problem. But what will be a concern is quite defined lines, particularly jagged lines. The main concern would be working outwards from the centre on a component such as this. So we're going to give that a wipe, and I reckon that's probably about clean enough there. And so we'll probably have a bit of pink misting coming through on the developer. So just shake up, and I'll just make sure it's coming through properly on the leg of my bench. Yep, my side. So then what we're going to do is just give it a bit of a waft over, just to make sure we've got a nice decent coverage. You can see there almost straight off the bat, not cracks necessarily, but where I showed you earlier where it had been butchered, where the locking tabs had been folded over, you can see that that's obviously held onto a little bit more of the dye than just on the flat surface. You can see it's just kind of a pink mist in some of the places there. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave that for 15 minutes or so, and we're going to come back to it once that's properly dried, and that should then pull any of the dye that's gone into any cracks on this out to the surface, and will give us a real good indication as to whether it's or not. So join back in 15 minutes. So it would appear that for once in my wretched life we've actually got some good news. Other than the likes of the bits and blobs of pink that have come through from, so that centre dot there is from when somebody's previously made a timing mark. That's to make sure that it goes to the correct one on the cam, and these are bits where somebody's been a bit too brutal, we're getting the lock tabs off. But outside of that, as you can see, we've got a bit of pink hazing and whatnot, but what we're looking for is a clear defined pink-red line. Either a straight line, jagged line, even if it comes in and goes out again is what we're really looking for to confirm that it's cracked. But in this instance, we appear to have got lucky with it, and that is looking pretty solid, and we'll go again. So that saved us at least another little bit of chunk of money on more parts, so all good. Pleased with that.